What are you still mad about? Miniflasks says back in my junior year history class, we were writing an open book quiz. I dropped my pencil and it bounced under the desk of a guy next to me. He noticed and picked it up. My teacher immediately failed both of us for cheating. The quiz was maybe 5% of our grade, and it was 20 years ago, but it still burns my grids.
The last dinosaur 82 says when I was in 2nd grade I asked my teacher permission to go to the bathroom. She said yes. When I came back I got in trouble for leaving the classroom without permission.
Gel with Alpha Dogs says when my son was 3 this big kid pushed him off the top of a bouncy house slide then jumped on top of him breaking his arm. I ran over to my son while my friend confronted the kid's dad. When told his son broke my kid's arm the dad laughed.
Helphoenix88 says when I was in kindergarten, my school had a student Olympics where all the kids would participate in physical competitions, like sprinting and jump ropes or other kid-friendly competitions. I was in the lead for the sprinting competition and it was the final lap. I was gonna win, I was so close. But one of my classmates ran behind me and shoved me down, making my knee bleed profusely. I don't care that I was injured, I'm just fucking pissed that the dipshit won. He didn't even get in trouble. I'm still pissed about that. Fuck you, Michael.
Andy Mazzy says we had a classroom pet lizard in the 3rd grade. I went to the pencil sharpener during class and noticed that it had been frightened and detached its tail. Something we learned about lizards when they brought it into the classroom. I loudly gasped when I saw it and received after-school detention for disrupting the class. I was an 8-year-old that was punished for seeing something scary to me. Still angry.
Broompicker says Bank of America doing their best to fuck up my home loan 10 years ago. Even though it eventually was sorted out, my blood pressure rises every time I think about it.
Harbinger says only being invited to my in-laws' house because they need something technology related fixed under the guise of food.
QCAS00 says when I was in the 6th grade, I had trouble with math, and as such, tended to ask a lot of questions in class. Once, when we were reviewing something, I think it was algebra, I raised my hand to ask a question because I didn't understand, and the teacher said, in an annoyed tone and totally serious, "Oh, geez, I guess you can bring a horse to water but you can't make it drink." Embarrassed me to the point where I never asked questions in that class again and ended up just barely passing. I'm 25 now, and it still makes me mad. Fuck you, Mrs. Magnuson.
Yonderipanda says I graduated in 2008, in the middle of that recession. There were no jobs available because I was magically overqualified with my college degree and underqualified with no experience. I got one interview and I was perfect for the job, but the employer said that I lived too far away. The commute would have been an hour and 10 minutes, but I was willing to move because I had just finished school and there was nothing keeping me in my college town. The interviewer just kept shaking his head saying that's too far of a drive. Dude, fucking listen to me. It would have been an awesome job.
Why did I bother with I says so back when I was in kindergarten my class has a huge snitch. We were doing arts and crafts and I ended up getting her as a partner. She said my name and when I turned around the string I was holding ended up hitting her in the arm, a string, and she cried and told the teacher, had to move my clip down, and my parents kept telling me don't hit people. After all that I still hate her.
Rosie's a bitch says being the only 2nd grade class in the history of my school to miss out in the annual apple picking trip, all because a group of boys had been consistently acting out for a while. The teachers believed the best way to punish them was to pull the field trip from everyone. Of course, the boys didn't learn anything from it, and I was left quite bitter.
Icon Has Nap Time says 2 things. In 1998, when I was 13 years old, the Smashing Pumpkins played a free concert in Minneapolis. I had never been to a concert before, but I convinced my mom to let me go. I had plans with my best friend and was super excited. That was until one of the neighbors needed a last-minute babysitter overnight to watch her infant and toddler. Mom decided I was doing that instead. She paid me $00 for the work, and I remember that being the first redesigned $00 bill I had ever seen, but I missed the concert. 100k people showed up. Yeah, it probably would have been a nightmare situation with that many people and me being so young, but I didn't get to be a part of it. And people are still talking about it, and at my old job we had 2 community fridges for everyone to bring their lunches, and freezers for us to store some bulk stuff. I had a box of corn dogs in the freezer. One day, I went to the break room to make a corn dog for lunch. I put my hand in the box, and was infuriated to find out that not only had all of my corn dogs been eaten by someone that was not me, rather than throwing the box away, they filled the box with ice cubes to weigh it down and put it back in the freezer. We all labeled our food with our names and dates, so whoever took my lunch knew it was my lunch. I know people's lunch gets stolen at work all the time. It's the audacity of weighing the box down and putting it back that really makes me mad. This was 7 or 8 years ago and I'm still mad about it. Never did find out who did it either.
Grumpy Batman says when I was 7, I spent the night at my cousin's house. Before dinner, my uncle led the prayer. When he finished, my cousin blurts OP had his eyes open while you prayed. So my uncle railed on me about how it's disrespectful to have your eyes open while you pray. I said how did he know my eyes were open if his eyes were closed? My uncle told me I couldn't have dessert. I never had my eyes open during the prayer bitch.
Pink String Thing says I was talking to my neighbor after school one day, and had asked me how my stepmom's pregnancy was doing. I didn't know what he was talking about, so he showed me a picture of a positive pregnancy test my stepmom had sent him 2 days prior. I had told my parents I was upset that they did not tell me. They denied it when I confronted my dad in the parking lot about him lying to me. He told me he does not lie to me. He denied that my stepmom was pregnant in the first place. The child is my father's. And about 2 months later, my stepmom walks up to me and says, "Since you already know I'm pregnant, it's a girl by the way." Edit. My neighbor is not the father of the child. He has his wonderful partner. I have gay neighbors.
Fixbar says when I was at university my sister's school had a fundraising thing where they accepted donations for them to sell off in a car boot sale. My mom gave away my entire book collection without letting me know. This included a book that my granddad gave to me when I turned 15 where he wishes me the best, a couple from teachers after I left their class, and a few that I exchanged with friends when I graduated secondary school. We gave each other a copy of some of our favorite books. I know I'm a nerd. I only found out months later with no way to track them down.
Mikahuzinga says that my parents sold my longboard that I bought and kept the money to themselves.
Erwin Archester1 says that I made it to the final 2 for a very good marketing job in a hiring process with WWE 6 years ago, only for at the final hour when they made their decision, a former employee got wind of the job and just texted the hiring manager, and both of us were out.
Finna Commit Superside says my best friend in 7th grade texted me while pretending to be her mom. She texted me saying that she had killed herself. And when I saw my friend in person the next week, she laughed when I told her that I had thrown up because I cried so hard. Now I have major trust issues and I still have a grudge on her.
I only play as Rust Lord says my mom let my sister play Nintendogs on my DS. She wanted to buy a new dog. The problem was to do that she had to delete another dog and she deleted Bello, my best dog that I had trained for over a year. My sister was 4 at the time but I am still mad about it.
Ask About My Dumb Site says I was at a skating competition about 4 hours away. I came home and found out my aunt had given my cats away to the SPCA and left before I came home so I couldn't confront her about it. Fuck you Aunt Kaye.
Happy Llama Parade says 6 years ago I was on vacation and had my oldest cousin pet sit my cats. We were only on vacay for 2 weeks. When we came back, she clearly didn't go in the house. The food and water bowls were completely empty, the litter boxes weren't cleaned, etc. And when I confronted her about it, her response, "Oh, I forgot. It's not that big of a deal anyway. I now understand it's not petty in the fucking slightest." Edit. Please stop replying, my inbox is fucking dead. And yes, the kitties are fine now other than the fact one of them has cancer, but I highly doubt it's from this.
Buster Dintle says Christmas Day when I was 8 I rode my brand new scooter to grandma's to show my uncle and left it in the front yard. I came out with my uncle less than 5 minutes later and someone stole that motherfucker. Edit. I don't remember this but I was talking to my brother. Apparently he was there too and got his scooter stolen as well.
Insane One says when I was 9 years old, my friend and I had the original red and yellow Pokemon games. We spent months getting every Pokemon weekend and evolving them to complete the Pokédex. We saved up our money and bought a link cable just so we can trade. Another month or so my friend's parents buy him blue version. We were ecstatic. We rushed through the game just to collect the exclusives to that game and trade it with one another. We each were at 149 Pokemon. One day my younger cousin, 5 years old, came over and wanted to play my Game Boy. I was afraid of letting him play on my saved file that I started a new game for him and handed him the Game Boy to play. Later on that day I took my Game Boy and went over to my friend's house. I started up the game and saw player Ash badges 0 Pokedex one time, 0:13 my heart sank when I saw that. I knew exactly what happened. That little dipshit saved over my file. I was bawling when it happened and my 8-year-old friend was consoling me saying it's going to be okay and we're going to do it all over again. We never did. When I confronted my cousin he said he didn't know what he was doing and pushed every button in the start menu. Still mad about it today. I will never get Magmar. I will never get 150 ever again.
Daniel says last year, on Father's Day, I found out that my father had passed away weeks prior. His wife, not my mother, kept that information from me purposely, and even used his cell phone and pretended to be him via text after he had passed. I will never get over this. Edit. Thank you all for the kind words. I rarely post and this kinder blew up, so I'll answer a few questions. I don't know if there's an inheritance. I've been told he blew a lot of his money on medical expenses and she was basically paying for everything at the end. I've called the probate court pretty much every month since it happened and nothing has been filed. I'm doing okay at best. It's been tough at times. Obviously this past weekend was rough, which I think is why I decided to randomly reply to this quest. I currently don't have an insurance, though that is changing soon, so I haven't been able to speak to anyone about it. Wow. Thank you for Reddit Gold. Not really sure what to do with it. I'm completely taken aback by the response of all you wonderful internet strangers. You've given me the courage to pursue this further and post this to our legal advice. You can't even begin to understand what this means to a man who's been struggling with his self-worth. Thank you all so much.
Tagelman says my dad always harassed me for not liking watermelon. He called me picky. I was one of the most open-minded kid eaters ever. I ate everything put in front of me. My dad would not eat squash. The hypocrisy.
Uzdom says I was working at a large nationwide retail store a few years back. My girlfriend, now wife, had brought me half a pizza so I could eat something. So I take it to the back, write my name real big on the box, and put it in the refrigerator. 2 hours later I go on my lunch break, grab the box and it feels a little off. I set it on a table and open it up. Empty. Some jackass ate all 4 slices of pizza and put the empty box back in the refrigerator. I'll never know who it was since the break room doesn't have cameras, and there are so many employees that go in and out within the 2-hour window. I don't have the words for what I felt, but it was somewhere between just sobbing on the floor and rage. I was so happy that my so thought of me enough to bring me food, and was really looking forward to it because I almost never ate at work. Only to get in there and open an empty box. Fuck you, fellow large nationwide retail store employee.
Passacheeks says when I was 19 and my sister was 16 my parents bought sister her first car. They said it wasn't truly hers, but when either of theirs weren't working they always asked her permission to borrow it. That car eventually was passed to me when they gave her second car. This car was a gift from one of my father's coworkers. The man told him it was for his daughter since the guy worked with my dad since my mom was pregnant with her. When I pointed out that my sister already had a car it made sense to give it to me. My father explained that since the guy didn't know I existed, the car had to go to my sister. Makes no sense to me, but I'm not about to argue with my dad. So, I asked that if when I'm ready to get my own car could they help me out. He agreed. Time comes when I've been working a while and the piece of crap I'd gotten from my sis is on its last legs. I did some shopping around and found something. I asked if they could help as they'd promised. I kid you not, my sister called a family meeting and convinced my parents that they shouldn't help me out because I had a job. They of course agreed with her. I'm in my 50s still bitter. Thanks sis. Edited to add a time frame.
The Like Guys 3 says I had a friend as close as a brother steal 00 cash from my wallet, and proceed to abuse the fuck out of my kindness. Good news is I got the money all back after he realized I was onto his theft and not falling for his lies. Bad news is he sliced my couch up, pretended to find 00 of the 00 trying to masquerade his theft. He even said I should give him a cut of that even though I was still out 00. My couch is still ruined, too, and I sleep on that thing. No longer associated with him, but I really wanna curb stomp his bitch ass. Edit, he's not a drug addict.
Wonder Twinkles says when I was 21, away at college, someone broke into my mom's house when she was away. It was over Christmas, and robbed her blind. The good thing, for her, was her homeowner's insurance covered and replaced everything, so her extremely out-of-date TV and stereo, etc., were all replaced with brand spanking new ones. What sucked, for me, is that no one noticed that my room had been rifled through and my entire comic book collection, which I'd been collecting since I was 5 years old, was gone. Also, all my old tabletop RPG books. Here's one that got stolen. I'd bought it new at my local game store when I was 13, and boxed sets had been cherry-picked off my bookcase in such a way that no one but me realized there were gaps. Some of those books were gifts, with inscriptions and everything because no one noticed my stuff was gone for over a year. I was outside of the window where my mom's homeowner's insurance would be paid to replace my things. I'm 46 years old. I wish upon those thieves a lifetime of paper cuts.
Jimmy Sinner says I went to a very Catholic school and the teacher I had when I was 7 years old told everybody who would listen that she could see the devil in me. It took me the better part of 2 decades to realize I wasn't a piece of shit because of her. I still kinda feel guilty about, existing. Earth says my mom surrendered my dog while I was at school cause the dog, kept eating my shoes. This was 15 years ago. I have a great relationship with my mom now, but I'm still mad about that one.
Tier's Electric says a friend from college called me and asked if I wanted to get coffee. I hadn't seen her in years and I really enjoyed hanging out with her back in the day, so I was very excited to hear from her. I happily drove out to a coffee shop a town over where she was in the area, walked in, gave her a hug, met a friend she had with her, got her drinks and settled into a corner. She was pitching me Amway. The friend was someone showing her how to do IT. This was 2011. I am still upset about it. Pastel_Galaxy_471 says my mom gave away our PS4 to my uncle. Edit. Some of you asked why she did it, so I wanted to reply. It is not the first time she does stuff like that. Her usual reply is you don't use it. Or it is just a game. The PS4 is just the most recent. I have a bunch of stories off her, so maybe I should go to her and send parents like someone commented. Sorry for the bad English, it is not my first language.
Hurricane Akama says I was about 9, 4th grade, when this happened. First off, my mom is a very religious woman who takes Christianity extremely seriously. She is also the type of person that is very inclined to believe anything that affirms her intuition, which led her to believe wild conspiracies based on shreds of evidence and her God-given mother's intuition. Well, like many people my age, I was completely obsessed with Pokemon back in the day. I saved up all my money I got from doing chores and yard work for our neighbors and went out and bought myself a brand new Gamma Boy SP and a copy of Pokemon Sapphire, which was all the rage among my 2nd grade friends at the time. Fast forward to 2 years later, a new family had moved into our neighborhood and all of their kids were around me and my brother's ages, so we started to hang out a lot, which let our moms, unfortunately, get to know each other. So one day I'm outside playing with some friends and my mom calls me back to our house. I unassumingly waltz in, unaware of the life-altering trauma I was about to experience. Apparently, my new friend's mother, we'll call her Mrs. L, was very into fringe Christian magazines, and lately a hot topic for these wannabe prophets were the Pokemon games. Mrs. L had informed my mother that she had read a lot about Pokemon recently and told my mom that the games were actually Chinese propaganda, disguised as video games, that was purposely designed to make American kids addicted to the games and feed them anti-Christian ideals. And yes, somehow my mother was convinced that this was true without doing any research on her own because I just knew something was odd about those games. Basically, Mrs. L and my mother agreed that they both needed to confiscate these games from their kids so that we were not fed any more propaganda. So, after an drawn-out lecture on our family's Christian values, my mother informed me that she would be ridding the house of any Pokemon games that we owned. She even explained to my brother and I that we would experience withdrawal symptoms due to those darn Chinese manipulating our minds with their addictive tech. So yeah, basically my mum rounded up all of our games, took them to GameStop, and sold them for scraps. This wouldn't have been as traumatic if this was any old game, but this was Pokemon. I had spent hours upon hours grinding as hard as my prepubescent thumbs would let me in those games. I specifically remember getting a Plurl to level 100 and being immensely proud of that feat. I probably had well over 200 hours poured into those cartridges, and what did I get in return? A used copy of Pac-Man World Rally for GameCube. The kicker? Mrs. L's kids threw a fit when she told them she was gonna take their games, so she ended up folding and letting them keep them. From then on, me and my brothers were the only children at school and in our neighborhood without Pokemon, and all we had to show for it was a Pac-Man racing game that was totally shit compared to Mario Kart. Fuck you, Mrs. L. Me and my level 100 Plurl will never forgive what you did to us. Edit. Some people are saying that Mrs. L didn't deserve the fuck you as much as my mother. I should have elaborated a little more about her. Don't get me wrong, fuck my mom for believing that shit. Every time I go home, me and my brothers still find a way to bring that up. Haha. But yeah, basically Mrs. L was the one that convinced my mom that it was the addictive propaganda nonsense. I was also best friends with her kids from late 3rd grade up until my 6th grade year. Why did we stop being friends, you ask? I got an Xbox with Call of Duty Black Ops, and she thought that meant I would end up being a total psychopath because of that. So yeah, we went from best friends who legit hung out 4 to 5 times a week to people I saw maybe once or twice a year at random events. In closing, it's still fuck Mrs. L. Last eclipse says in 2nd grade, some kid asked me what I thought of his cube building. I told him it was priceless. He promptly called the teacher over and told her that I had insulted his building. She agreed with him and put me in detention after class. If you're reading this, you can go fuck yourself. Garrett. And edit. Thank you all for making this miserable memory a little less miserable. I think I speak for all of us when we say, fuck you, Garrett.
Cherub77 says, when I was in elementary we had a thing called school habits. The teachers will make sure that we went with the correct school uniform. White socks all the way up, hair tied up. My mom always sent me to school with everything correct. But my dumbass witch teacher never put me a 10, so it was 6 or 7, which was really low. My mom went to talk about it and my teacher said yeah, but after recess she has her socks down, her hair all messy etc. Like, bitch, I was in elementary. I will run all over the place, you asshole. Later we found out it was BC. My mom was single mom. This teacher was super religious and didn't approve my mom having a child without getting married. That teacher is an asshole.
Bunny Drumming says that my brother bullied, emotionally blackmailed my dad into spending over tens of thousands of pound on his farm in a couple of years before my dad died. My brother knew he was inheriting the farm and went on and on about how he would struggle financially and how solar panels would help until dad to install them, and put in new heating and bought extra fields. Then the day before my dad died at home, I found him giving his wife's family a tour of the house and showing them what he was going to change. I hate him for it, but almost the last thing my dad said to me was, "It's up to you to keep the family together." So I've never challenged him about his behavior or the lies he's told people since. Really upsets me 3 years later.
Mogadon Mandy says, I had a best friend, friends for 20 odd years, since we were 12. A few years ago she did something that let my daughter down. I spoke to her and told her not to promise things to a child that you then won't deliver on. It was her time she had promised and my daughter was so excited to spend time with her. After that conversation she cut me dead. Deleted me from FB, out of her life. That was at 20 years of going through everything together and it's just gone. I'm so mad and hurt, still.
Hey Sister Brutus replies, best friend breakups are the worst. I'm sorry for your loss. Fedeli Affiliate says 2 years ago when my mom died we had a low-key memorial barbecue. My mom wouldn't have wanted anything fancy. She legitimately told me to burn her and save the life insurance money before she passed anyway. Her older sister, who lived less than an hour away, couldn't be bothered to attend. Keep in mind that my impoverished mother had been both loaning them money and lending them her car. Not to mention my family had provided them the land to place their home on. She had no job. There was literally no reason for her not to be there. 2 years previous I had taken 2 days off of work and drove 3 hours to be with them when her husband died. Dead to me.
Callie Anywhere says my mother body shaming me when I was 11. I'm nearly 40 now. I had started growing pubic hair and she and my older sister would laugh nastily about how long it was. IDK if it really was. I've never fucking measured. She said it was long like a taproot, and she and my sister started calling me taproot to get a rise out of me. Sometimes they would call me that in front of other people, as a threat to embarrass me by outing my freakish pubes. The puzzled person would press them to explain the nickname and what was so funny about it. I would beg them, with tears of fury and shame, not to tell, and people would wonder why an 11-year-old girl was crying over a silly random nickname. She also told me, around that time, that I was in my ugly stage. Since I was never told I had outgrown that stage, I simply trusted that I continued to be in my ugly stage. Now that the flush of youth is gone, I look back at photos from when I was 14-30 and regret how much I hated my body. I'm not saying I was ever a great beauty, but I definitely didn't deserve to feel as ugly as I did. Edit. Wow. Thank you all for the kindness and love. I feel it through the internet. Having so many of you be indignant on my behalf is so validating. I'd like all you kind people to know that I'm fine now. I have a wonderful husband who values good health, inspires me to exercise and take care of my body, and tries to convince me that I'm beautiful. We have 2 healthy children who we raise to appreciate their bodies for being healthy, but I do sprinkle them with generous comments about how beautiful, handsome they are. The biggest part of me overcoming my body hatred was becoming fit. When I'm fit I care less about how I look. I really enjoy how I feel. Love to all of you.
Critically Normal says 9 years ago my now wife came to my place for the second time and dipped her spoon into my tiramisu after refusing her portion.
Lollipop Flip says in grade 8, on the school bus home, someone behind me threw a paper ball at the bus driver. I was looking at the bus driver. She immediately said it was me. I denied it. She reported me to the assistant principal. I got detention for the first time ever because some ashat decided to throw a piece of paper at the bus driver. I'm still sour about that stupid incident.
Bami IE says that the vets tried to take my brother's, 16 at the time, bird away, saying he needed a license and wasn't qualified to have bird. Our dad's friend found the bird a few weeks old and was dying. My brother nursed it back to health and would wake up at ridiculous hours to just look after it. Bird got sick, so my brother and mom took Bird, now called Ella, to the vet. They took Ella. My brother started crying and tried running away with her cause he didn't want to leave her. He ended up running into a dead end and the bird was taken away 3 days later. The vets called and said he could have the bird back as a bird expert or something. Said that the bird was just malnourished and told them to give it back to him as the bird was happier with him, and not coping well without him. Something along these lines. I heard about this. And within 5 fucking minutes of researching licenses regarding this bird, would you have fucking guessed that you didn't need a license? So my brother was sad and clearly fucking depressed because his baby was taken away and he was told he would never have her back. But would you look at that?
La la la. Late bar says shortly after our breakup I realized that my late mother's jewelry box was missing. There wasn't anything high-end or expensive in it, but that ashat either took it and tossed it just to be a dick, or he took it and gave it to the gutter slut he was banging behind my back. Either way, I no longer have the only thing I ever wanted from the jewelry box, the charm bracelet my mother had throughout her life. The charms represented big moments on her life. Graduation, wedding, my birth. All of them are gone. Fuck you, Jason. Nerdative says my boss firing me from the job that I excelled at and loved because I didn't seem to be enjoying it enough. Not my fault that I was dealing with a lot of loss and pain last year and couldn't always be my happiest self. And now add to that unemployment. Still can't find a job despite a degree, loads of work experience, and good references almost a whole year later. Thanks for putting me on the verge of homelessness, you happiness obsessed cunt of an ex-boss.
Elon Musk's God says the fact that my fucking shitty-ass elementary school did nothing to stop bullies. They would preach about not letting bullies continue their actions, then turned a blind eye when kids would throw rocks at me.
Vicky B57 says a few years ago my husband and I were planning our wedding, only his family wanted it rushed because I was pregnant. They are super religious, mine didn't care, and they all got together and decided on a few dates. Those dates my mom was busy. Business trips mostly, but it was all stuff she couldn't back out of. I told them this, asked to push off the wedding, asked several times as nicely as I could manage. Several of my husband's family members basically said she was a shit mom for choosing these already planned and paid for things over her own daughter's wedding. So I threatened to go on one of her business trips with her, a business trip to Hawaii, that lasted a week before and a week after the wedding date window, if they wouldn't reschedule. My mom even offered to pay for me to join her. Love her so much for this, and they finally caved and realized I was serious. Yay, I'm still mad at those family members for calling her a shit mother.
Nafana says a bitch in elementary school stole my favorite pet shop, the tiny animal toys with huge eyes. I still hate her for it. If you're reading this, Nora, go fuck yourself.
JF808 says really long story. TLDR at the bottom, I had been trying to schedule a meeting with the higher up at our client for weeks. I finally got in touch with his admin who said she needed him to confirm that the meeting was needed before she could schedule it. Fair enough. She forwarded me to his voicemail. Weeks later and countless calls and emails to him and the admin, and I finally got through to her on a day when he was in the office. He and I discussed, and he agreed that we should meet. He forwarded my call back to his admin. She and I found a date and time that would work, and we agreed that she would send the invite to everyone, because we were meeting in a room at the client office. I sent her the email with the list of attendees while still on the phone with her and explained that I couldn't access the calendars of 2 of the attendees. They may or may not come based on their availability but should be included anyway. I hang up and head into another meeting, then came out to a ton of emails, 2 voicemails, and some texts. The emails were, the invite, a cancellation 10 minutes later, an email from the client with all attendees, my boss, and my boss's boss, the company owner, copied, explaining that his admin works hard and doesn't deserve to be treated like this. If we still want the meeting, we can schedule it on our own. A million back and forths between my boss, boss's boss, and the 2 others on the invite, trying to figure out how I offended this guy so much. The voicemails were from my boss and my boss's boss, panicking trying to figure out what was going on. The text was from my boss, who knew I was in the other meeting, trying to get my attention to leave and call her. Being a good employee, my phone was on silent. I said fuck that and called the client's personal cell phone. We have access to a database with everybody's office and personal numbers. But there is an understanding that we are only to communicate using office numbers, and preferable directly with the admin, except in extreme circumstances. Me potentially losing my job seemed extreme enough to me, he answered, and I immediately dove into hi, this is me, from company. I'm not sure how I offended your admin, but we had a great conversation earlier before I jumped into a meeting. Then I came out to what seems like a really tense situation. I just wanted to call to see what was going on and how we could fix it. Well, my admin tells me that she sent the invite and immediately got 2 people declining from your company, so she cancelled the meeting. If you want the meeting, you can still have that time on my calendar, but you need to schedule it. Okay. We discussed that. I just wanted to lock down the time on your schedule but couldn't access everyone's calendar. I guess it's just a misunderstanding. Can you pass me back to her, so I can ask her to reserve the room, then I'll send the invite. Haha. Yup, just a misunderstanding. He then apologized to me and said that she's been a little stressed, because she's headed out on vacation next week. We joked about how stressful that can be, trying to pull everything together in those last few days while I was trying to keep my anger and confusion down. I'll ask her to reserve the room. Please also include her when you send the invite. Thanks for calling to clear everything up. Okay, thanks. We'll see you. Date and time of meeting. The bitch cancelled the whole fucking meeting that I spent over a month trying to schedule, because 2 people that I told her were up in the air didn't accept the invite. Turns out, They both replied tentative. It took me hours to try explaining this to my boss and boss's boss to their satisfaction that the client wasn't angered out of his mind, and in fact he laughed about the misunderstanding on the phone. I then had to stand up at the next staff meeting to discuss the situation and how I could have handled it better. TLDR, I spent over a month scheduling a meeting with the client. His admin immediately cancelled the meeting after 2 people replied tentative, even though I warned her they might not attend. Drama ensues as the client involves my boss and boss's boss on an email saying that I can't treat the admin like that.
This newsite says mad that I'm profoundly deaf because my mother was too lazy to take me to the hospital when I had severe fever. Alindriel says my pappy changed his sermon on the way to church because I was wearing a short-sleeved dress. In Oklahoma, in July, it went almost to the ground, but the fact that it had short sleeves made it immodest according to him. There weren't actual church rules about it, just his, and he didn't say something at the house so I could change. He waited for us to get on the road and then told me that since I was dressed so inappropriately that the sermon would be changed to refer to my behavior. He busted out Ecclesiastes and talked about vanity, and told the congregation that it was because of me and my dress. There were about 120 or so people there. I was 11. I'm almost 40 now. He mellowed as he got older, but he never did say he was sorry.
Great Etherosh says a Baron Martel.
Disastrous Republic 10 says when my ex left me and I asked, just be honest, are you having an affair with your coworker? And she said, no. I knew she was. She knew I knew she was. But she lied anyway. Breaking up happens. Affairs happen. That lie was just mean.
Nicholite 46 says when my dad gave away my goddamn samurai sword to a children's charity thinking it was a toy.
Tornado of Benjamin says I failed the qualifying round for the school's English spelling bee because I didn't indicate the tilde in jalapeno. Do you see the issue here?
Edgar says my holographic Charizard, I was so excited when I got it and couldn't wait to show it off at school the next day. Then, about halfway through the day, it goes missing. I looked everywhere and I could not find it and was super bummed out. The very next day this kid Marcelo shows up with his own Charizard, and even though I couldn't prove it was mine, I knew it was. The timing was just too convenient that I lost mine and then he gets one.
Fandina says when I was in junior high they found a desk with notes for a test written on it. They blamed me for it and everyone in the classroom knew who made it. The super nerd girl who cries when gets an A, she and me had very similar handwriting. She didn't took the blame and watched them punishing me by failing me in the class. Bitch.